Praised be Jesus and Mary. Today we celebrate Saints Timothy and Titus, and we know that from the New Testament, from both St. Paul's epistles to his young bishops, we learn from them that from Timothy's life, it sounds like that of a modern harassed bishop. That he did have the honor of being a fellow apostle with St. Paul, both sharing in the privilege of preaching the gospel and suffering for it. He had a Greek father and a Jewish mother named Eunice, and now, being a product of a mixed marriage, he was considered illegitimate by the Jews. It was his grandmother, Lois, who first became a Christian, and then he and his mother. Timothy was a convert of St. Paul, and later we know joined him in his apostolic work. During the 15 years that he worked with St. Paul, he became one of the most faithful and trusted friends. He was sent on difficult missions by Paul, often in the face of the great disturbances in the local churches which Paul had founded. Timothy was with St. Paul in Rome during his house arrest. And at one point, Timothy himself was in prison. We learn that from St. Paul's epistle to the Hebrews. Paul eventually installed him as bishop in the church at Ephesus, and despite his young age, for the work that he was doing. Titus also had the distinction of being a close friend and a disciple of St. Paul, as well as a fellow missionary. He was Greek, and even though a Gentile, Paul would not let him be forced to undergo circumcision at Jerusalem. St. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians gives us an insight into the depth of their friendship and their great fellowship that they had in preaching the gospel. When St. Paul was having trouble with the community at Corinth, Titus was the bearer of St. Paul's severe letter, and he was successful in smoothing things out. St. Paul writes that he was strengthened, not only by the arrival of Titus, but also with the good news that he came with, by the encouragement that he received with regard to the Corinthians. St. Paul's letter to Titus addresses him as the administrator of the Christian community on the island of Crete. He was charged with organizing it and correcting the abuses there and appointing presbyter bishops. Both we see in Timothy and Titus. We get another glimpse of life in the early church. Their great zeal in the apostolate, great unity in Christ, great friendship. Yet, always there's the problem of weakened human nature and the then glamorous details of daily life. I mean, they face many of the same problems we face. And they have the same sacraments that we have, the same Eucharistic Lord to go to face these problems. The same need to practice charity toward one another and patience in quarrels with others and fears within myself, as St. Paul says. But through it all, the love of Christ sustained them, and the love of Christ will sustain us as well.